All right, welcome. We are on week number 20, day number 1 of 2. We're going to meet twice this week. So today we're going to finish up on the discussion of the Yoga Sutras as commented on by Desikachar. Now, there's not a lot left. I think I started Pada 3 last week, and then Pada 4 is, I don't know, they're kind of hard to grasp for me because they're so minute. The details on the functions of the mind are so microscopic that it almost seems tedious to me a little bit. So I'm just going to mention a couple of things in Pada 3, and I'm going to leave Pada 4 alone for now. If I decide I can bring it in next week or later, I will, but right now I don't really want to boggle us down with what's discussed in Pada 4. But in Pada 3, the main discussion seems to be samyama, which is, let me get the exact definition. Samyama is, where is it? Way at the beginning, I guess. Okay, samyama is the process of changing our mental potential from incomplete, erroneous comprehension of an object or no comprehension at all to total comprehension. So it sounds like focus and meditation on either a single object or a topic or an idea with the objective of getting a clear understanding of whatever it is you're meditating on. And it talks about samyama on different topics. So Sutra 3.18 talks about samyama on one's tendencies and habits, which is like self-study, just examining your own mental habits, your behavior tendencies, what you kind of lean towards doing, and also thinking about where those come from. So self-analysis to understand what has influenced you to become that way. For example, experiences growing up or even trauma from the past that have all shaped how you think and feel and react to certain stimuli. So that's one samyama. And then samyama on the changes that arise in an individual's mind and their consequences as develops in one the ability to acutely observe the state of the mind of others. In other words, the better you understand yourself, the more equipped you are to understand others, because you have a clearer lens and a better awareness of what goes on inside of you, so you can observe others and have a better perspective of what's going on inside of them, theoretically.
No, it
And
can be
then,
it can be actually I mean it can be
yeah,
actually you can live with that because to me that part of the sutra he's talking about empathy. How can you empathy rather than just sympathy? So if you know yourself, you feel for yourself. It's easy for you to feel for others.
yeah, that's a
That
great point. That's a great
that
point.
was I think that's the way I understood
Mm-hmm.
this sutra. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So,
The more you
um,
understand and know yourself, the better you can really not
right.
only see, but empathize, feel for others. Yeah.
Yeah, and being able, so it might take practice, like being able to focus on how someone might be feeling and observing and meditating on,
Mhm.
being able to think deeply about what someone else might be thinking or feeling or what their motivations might be, and doing that in a with an open heart, like an empathetic from an empathetic position, like a place of compassion, like you want to understand. Yeah, that's
Mhm.
excellent. And then it talks about samyama on the features of your body. Um, and then also directing your mind to, it talks about meditating on the physical strength of an elephant, for example, to give yourself strength. So I think that's just maybe doesn't have to be an elephant specifically, but it can be any other kind of trait that you are after. Maybe a guru or a teacher or someone you admire. For us, maybe it's deity, Jesus Christ, for example. Samyama on his life and his example is something I do all the time. Samyama on the sun. It says here, this is interesting. This is Sutra 3.26. Samyama on the sun gives wide knowledge of the planetary system and the cosmic regions. Well, I think that needs a little bit of outside information. I don't know that we can simply look at the sun, think about the sun, and know that there are other planets that are around and what they are. But so I think that requires a little more study than just samyama, more meditation. But maybe samyama does include studying from other sources. So we can think of it in that terms as well. And then the moon on the Polaris, the throat, okay, navel, the throat. So now we're talking about chakras, navel, throat, chest area, and then high intelligence. So here, the third eye and possibly the crown of the head. Um, And one claim that it makes, which I think is interesting to think about, is that in Sutra 3.33, anything can be understood with each attempt, fresh and spontaneous understanding arises. So that's a very interesting idea, spontaneous understanding. So I want us to think about that for a moment. Is that true? Can we learn something spontaneously? Can we gain understanding just, by thinking, meditating on it?
In the Western side, we call it uh, ano, it's brilliant. Something, a bright idea will just come. A flash of an idea. It
Oh,
can really,
inspiration.
yeah, it can.
Inspiration. Yeah.
Just on the moment, yeah. Spontaneity.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I believe in inspiration. I certainly have received some here and there. I think we all have.
Mhm.
Yeah. So I would like to suggest that in terms of the practice of yoga, so let's say we go through asana, pranayama, we've become aware of the yamas and the niyamas. We are open-minded about them. We want to honor those values. And I think that helps to clear avidya, right? Kind of the clouds in our minds. It kind of straightens us out a little bit. And then we discipline the body, we discipline the breath, pratyahara and dharana and dhyana, those three inner arts. And contemplation on maybe a particular idea or object or something that's on our mind can lead to that samadhi where we become one with what we're meditating on. But that process right there of understanding is what it's talking about, samyama, I believe. And and as we apply it to different questions or problems in our life, right, we become kind of good at it without doing all the other asana, pranayama. It becomes a skill because when we've done it enough, especially if we've lived long enough, and we've run into a lot of challenges in our lives, you just develop this skill of being able to contemplate and have your mind be open to inspiration, understanding, knowledge, guidance, if you will. But also, I feel like we always have to consult that North Star and feed our minds with truth, different sources of truth. So, let me see if there's anything else that I wanted to point out. Um, so consistent with the third eye and the heart chakra having that communication. Remember, I don't know if you remember the heart mind connection that we talked about early on. Yeah, so it says here in Sutra 3.34, the heart is considered to be the seat of the mind. Samyama on the heart will definitely reveal the qualities of the mind. And that's exactly what we have seen at a physiological level, because there is energy that communicates from the brain to the heart to the brain. There are actually neurons in the heart. So
Yeah.
thinking that it's just a muscle is no longer what's understood scientifically. There's
That
actually
was discussed
neurons.
in your topic about heart and mind cohesion.
Yeah, exactly. And the heart is
Mm.
intelligent. There's
Yeah.
intelligence there. It's just like when you feel something is right or you feel something is not right. There's intelligence there. Okay, let's see what else I wanted to. Okay, so there's some more here, but I'm going to save that for next time. After Sutra 3.34, that's the last one that we talked about. Um, we talked about the perceiver last time. So I'm gonna leave that for now and hop over to biomechanics. So let me pull up my PowerPoint and start from the beginning. All right. Biomechanics of yoga. What is biomechanics? Do you have any familiarity with that term?
In the Philippines, we call it movement science or science of movement.
Science of movement. Hmm.
Yeah.
Yes, true. So kinesiology is technically the science of movement. Biomechanics is part of kinesiology. It's a specific area of study, and it involves how force, specifically force, affects the structure, function, and movement on the human body. It's a division of kinesiology, which is the science of movement, and the study of biomechanics are applied in a variety of fields. It's actually a offshoot of physics. I don't know if you guys have any familiarity with physics. It's like, how do things move? Force, speed, acceleration, gravity. Those are all topics within the physics field, and that's what biomechanics is, but specifically how it relates to the human body. So we have different fields that offshoot from that. People who study biomechanics may design ergonomic furniture. They can work with sports teams in training or rehabilitation, and they can even engineer artificial tissues for surgical procedures. Um, People who make artificial limbs, and there's probably more. Biomechanics is also used in lately more so in animation, because they study specifically how the body moves and how to animate it. Um, they can analyze elite athletes' movements using technology to see, how can we improve performance, how can we increase power, what's the better type of movement for optimal safety. So there's a lot of modern applications, also in robotics. So the study of movement of people to inform how they can build robots that can do what we do. So there's a lot of applications of biomechanics in technology. In one of my classes, at Cal State Fullerton, my teacher had us put markers on certain joints, like the shoulder, the elbow, depending on what you're studying, the hip, the knee, the ankle, and then they have a special program to film movements, and then you analyze that. So it's a very interesting field. Specifically, biomechanics of yoga looks at how forces affect the body in the practice of yoga, obviously. So, usually when we think of biomechanics, we may think of alignment, but alignment is actually applied anatomy. Biomechanics would look at the effect of force or load on the knee in the yoga poses, for example. So I have two examples here, right? In the lunge. Here, the knee is over the ankle, right? And the hands are on the floor. Here, the knee is, the knee is beyond the ankle. Here, the knee is on top of the ankle and the body is upright. So the force on the knee, if we're going to look specifically on the knee, between these two poses are going to be different. And the performance of this pose is going to depend on certain factors like the flexibility in the knee, the strength in the quadriceps, the flexibility in the ankle, the strength or stability of the core and the hips, because this one is less weight bearing than this one. So think of force now as far as, oh, what happened? Where did my pictures go? There it is. Oh, I went to a different slide. Okay, so when we think of force, what is the one force that is always working on us in nature?
Gravity.
Yeah. So gravity is the one pulling down on both of these bodies. And as a result of the different position, gravity is going to have a different effect on the joints. So in addition to the knee, the ankle, the spine is going to have a different load because in this one, that's at an angle. So you think of gravity is going in this direction, right? So is there going to be less force on the spine? Let's talk maybe just specifically on the lower back. Less or more here than here?
I'm going to say less.
I'm going to say less too, because the weight is not directly on top of the lower back, right? But then there's other factors to consider, like the angle of this incline. How does that differ from when you're upright? And then also the load on the hips is going to be different because here you're sharing the load with the hands, but this one also looks more passive, like there's more of a sink in the hips, whereas here he's holding himself upright. So there's going to be different muscle actions as well. All of those are considerations in the biomechanics field. Okay, so the effects of force have to do with anatomical position, like the pose or the body shape. What exactly are you putting your body into? What shape are you going into? So that's going to affect the force. The placement, so building the pose from the ground up, that's going to affect the force on your body. Posture, meaning how is your torso held? How are you engaging the core? That's going to affect the force on your body. And movement, so going from point A to point B, how are you doing that? That's going to also affect force on your body. So let's look at each of these one by one, and we have some pictures as examples. Oh, sorry, one more idea to talk about. There's two kinds of force: the weight-bearing load on the joints, bones, and cartilage, very much affected by body position and in relation to gravity, as well as how much load is on that particular joint weight-wise. And then there's tensile loading on soft musculoskeletal tissue, which is stretching. So the two kinds of forces we're talking about. We're going to talk about stretching in detail later, after we talk about the different ways that force affects your body. All right, so anatomical position is the first one. This is so obvious. I know it's obvious, but here's like two opposites. This one is completely upright, and this one is completely reclined. So what forces are at work? Gravity, obviously, and where are they at work? So here gravity is pressing down in this direction, all in one line, right? Concentrated in one line of energy. Here, there's gravity distributed throughout the whole length of the body. So that's going to affect what muscles you use. Obviously, I know it's obvious. And which joints are taking the load? Well, all of these up the spine, the hips, the knees, the ankles, the shoulders, not so much the elbows, but there's a little bit of pull, not so much the hands and the wrists. And here, what's interesting is everything is, the whole length of the body is feeling that pull of gravity, but to a lesser degree because you're not carrying all your weight. It's passive. So what can make either of these positions difficult? Like what kinds of conditions do you think would make these positions difficult?
You raise your leg, one leg.
Huh?
You raise one leg. You go to a one-legged Tadasana. That will
Okay,
add more.
yeah, you can give the challenge, but I'm talking like just think of physical conditions. What kind of physical conditions would make standing up straight
Yeah.
challenging?
Maybe you had like flat feet,
Flat feet, What else, Manny?
knee pain.
Knee pain. So the health of the joint.
Most people have posture issues. Like you are hyperlordotic.
Yeah, the
You're
lower
always
back.
standing with your hips, jutting out. Or
Yeah.
you have kyphotic, you're like, a hunchback.
Yes, exactly.
Most young people now have this kind of postural issue. We
Mhm.
call it forward head
Forward
because of
head.
the computer,
Yes,
cell phone.
exactly. Yeah,
know,
because their head is always this and they're looking down. So it takes out the
it's,
curve in their neck. Yeah.
and women who are always wearing high heels, they will have a lot of postural
That
issues.
affects, yeah, the tendons in in the back of the leg, or the Achilles tendon gets
Yeah, their
shortened.
ankles,
Mhm.
not to
But
mention the banyan.
yeah, and you make a good point about the spine, lordosis and kyphosis.
Yeah.
I didn't get any pictures of that. Let me look that up real fast because that's important. Because you'll see it. Yeah.
Yeah, there is a picture there. Just
Yep.
click that picture on your right.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That one.
yeah.
So there's a
That's it.
sway back. Lordosis is this kind of the tailbone is sticking out.
Most women are that's a problem of many women.
And
When
then
they're
here's,
doing poses, supposedly you engage your core, the more they engage their back.
oh,
Remember, they always press on their lower back, even
mhm.
though you tell them to squeeze
Your glutes.
their out, they sticking out, so they cannot distinguish the core
Mm.
with the back and the front. Yeah.
Oh, interesting. Yeah. Yeah, and then there's this one, the thoracic kyphosis, so it's the curve in the upper back. Forward head, like you were saying. I don't see kyphosis.
The people with who are scoliotic are probably they have kyphosis. They
Oh,
have
yes,
thoracic.
you're right. Scoliosis. So
Yeah.
this is the idea where your ear and your shoulder and your hip and your ankle line up. You know, generally. Let's take a look at, isn't there lumbar kyphosis too? It's not showing it there.
There, that's the.
This one, right? Here's scoliosis right here.
Yeah.
Curves right
You know,
here.
we Asians are more prone to scoliosis and kyphosis
Are we?
as we get older. Yeah, studies show that Asians are more vulnerable.
I didn't know that. Okay, so the hips also can be involved. This is showing kyphosis in the, I want to see it, we're on the hips. Let's see. I guess it's mostly shoulders. Well, it's a little bit here. You can see that the hips are kind of, the tailbone is kind of down. Kyphosis, it shows it more in the upper back, huh? I want to say that kyphosis in the lower back, there's less. Oh, yeah. So here you can see there's a curve here. Kyphosis. Oh, lordosis is the tailbone sticking out, and the kyphosis is when the tailbone is more forward. Does that make sense? There's less curve in the back. Here, and lordosis, there's too much curve in the back. Okay, so there's that. And let me go back to this. All right, so next one, and that's anatomical position, depending on where you are, what shape your body is in and where you are. And then placement. So these ones I thought was interesting because they're the same shape, but different direction. Here, the back bend is right, the tummy's on the floor, and here the tummy is up in the air, but it's the same type of back bend. Amanda's here. Hi, Amanda. So we're just talking about biomechanics now. All right, so depending on where you're building the pose from, the ground up, it'll affect the forces of gravity because gravity goes towards the earth. So which joints are taking the load, which muscles are involved, and how, what can make either of these positions difficult? All right, so can you agree that even though they're the same shape, they feel totally different?
Yes.
Right? So for example, here in upward bow, which joints are taking the load? The weight.
Mostly the shoulder,
The
the
arms.
knees. Yeah.
The arms. You have to have some strength in your legs because you have to press your hips up, like doing a bridge pose. So you have to press the hips, the feet down to get the hips up. But there's also tensile load. Where is the tensile load, meaning the stretch? Where is the tensile load going to be?
Me, I'm having a problem in upward bow on my stomach, my front.
Oh, I remember you said that. Yeah.
The posterior side, because it's really pulling my abs so tight.
Stretching your belly. Yeah.
Yeah, stretching.
Since you've been working with TRX to strengthen your core. Yeah.
Yeah. So sometimes you just have to compromise.
And you're sure it's your belly?
Yeah, from the solar plexus first, it starts then going down.
To the pubic bone?
Yes, from
It's
there.
not your chest?
No, that it's I have some issues with my uh, sleep disc, but I can manage it now. It's just that
Uh-huh.
on the abs now. Before I do that, even I use a platform to do it
Mm.
higher. I can straighten my legs now. I'm having a hard time
Hmm.
because of the pain that's causing here.
In your belly.
Trying to do uh, the breathing here on the solar plexus breathing, the bandha, I
Mm.
cannot.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So there's some, of course, everybody's going to be different, right? People with really tight shoulders and depending on the anatomy of their shoulders, they may feel more of this on their shoulders, or
Mhm.
it could be the quads,
Mhm.
or it could be the spine, right? And then this one, okay, which joints are taking the load?
The hips,
The
the
hip.
hips.
Yeah. And which muscles are tensile, taking the tensile load? For her,
The
The
shoulder.
back,
shoulders,
yeah,
yeah, and the back bend,
or back.
the quads too. So similar here, quads, quads, but there's weight on her feet, whereas her feet doesn't have any weight. She's not bearing weight on her feet. So gravity's mainly working here on this area. Okay.
So in a way, we're talking about the agonist and antagonist muscles in every pose. No?
Yes, we are. And we're going to get to that later though, because it's not as cut and dry as
Yes.
we think sometimes. But
Yeah.
yeah, we'll
Yeah.
get to that when we talk about stretching. All right, so here, your posture, meaning how you hold your trunk, and basically that's core engagement, right? So that's going to affect the forces that are working on your body. So we have here Utthita Parshva Konasana. This one, her hand is on the ground behind her leg. She's in a nice straight line from her foot to her hand. And then sometimes we even rest our elbow on our thigh, depending, right? If we can't get down this low or don't want to get down this low. So that's going to be one type of load on the torso, the core. And then this was interesting because it shows you this progression from a variation of Utthita Parshva Konasana with this hand also lifted. So now he's not bearing any weight on this bottom hand. That's going to feel different than this. And if you take it one step further, if he takes it over to Ardha Chandrasana, that's going to feel different as well.
No
So,
hands.
huh?
No
Right?
hands.
No hands, yeah. So which joints are taking the load? Where is the load here, do you think?
The the hips, the knee.
The
The
knee.
hips, the knees, yep.
But the knee is not much because it's there because it's not aligned with the heel. In Iyengar, the heel and the knee must be on top
Line
of
up.
each other.
Mm-hmm.
So so to lighten the load, she's moving her hip backward.
Hip back. Yeah, that's true.
But the opening of the hips is not much in that position. But
Mm-hmm.
the Parsvakonasana is for hip opening pose. So she must lower the hips. By lowering the hips, she must align the knee to the heel.
To the
That's a
ankle.
very difficult pose. Yeah, very challenging.
Okay, so if we're talking about the core, okay, wait, let's go back to joints taking the load. So which joints is going to take the load here?
Yeah, the hips and the knee
The
and the
knee,
ankle.
else, but then the
The three
spine,
joints. Yeah. The three joints.
and then also the spine because you're no longer supporting your weight with this bottom hand, right? And then here, the same, the spine is going to be, you got to hold your spine up in the air, but there's also the hip and the standing leg, of course. Yeah. All right, what muscles are involved and how? Let's talk
You must,
mainly about the core.
yeah, you must have a very, very strong obliques there, especially the external obliques, for
Mm-hmm.
you to flex it like that, and then later on extend it. Very
Right.
hard. It's a
And
very
also,
challenging movement. Shifting from
yes.
flexion to extension of your muscle.
Especially in this one where you're floating. I call this a float when you don't have the hand on the floor. It's that deep abdominal, so the transversus abdominis, the one that wraps around the whole rib, the whole lower back, not rib
But to
cage.
propel you up, you need your obliques to
Yeah.
lift the body. You need to initially activate
Uh-huh.
that.
Okay. Okay. So I think a weak core is going to make this difficult. And the way that you'll be able to tell that a person is not really ready for this is if they can't stay parallel, if they start to round forward.
And also, if their hips are turning down, meaning it cannot face sideways,
The
it's
stand,
rotating down. That is also one sign of the preparedness of a student to go into that pose. If you
you
see
mean
that
you mean this
their
this
hips
leg?
turning down,
This,
turning, yeah, it's swaying, turning to the one side
Mhm.
instead of, squared.
Yeah, like with if these toes right here are turning down instead of to the side.
Or on
That's
the
what you
and the
mean.
hips. The most, to me, my indicator there is their hip is like in a warrior tree.
Right.
They're just their torso.
They can't stack
Not,
the hips.
they cannot stack their hips. Yeah.
Yeah. And that's partly glute because that's the external rotator and the lower
What
belly.
I do there is that I make them do that on a wall so that they will not worry on their balance, rather focus on their strength.
Yeah.
Because the problem there is also balance. So what we can do there is, do that on a wall.
hmm Yep, I agree. The wall can be very helpful. And it also helps you line things up so you know where you need to be.
Yeah.
Sorry. Okay, the
Really.
last one is movement. So we're thinking about how the load changes as you're going from point A to point B. So if our starting point is down dog, and we take one leg up for three-legged dog, it's going to be different if we take the leg over or if we keep it straight up, right? So I want you to kind of look and analyze a little bit their body position to figure out how the load is changing. So first, let's go from down dog to three-legged dog. How did the load change? From here to here. Where do you have more load with this leg up?
Usually people, they cannot raise their leg that high, practically diagonal, because they cannot really press their hands to really lift their torso and hips up. So that's one problem. And tendency, if they what they do is they bend they flex their spine to be able to lift the leg. So sometimes you don't have to lift it that high. Just lift it up to the level of your hips is good enough for me. As
Hmm.
long as you keep your hips squared on the
You
floor,
mean
because you
like
will rotate.
this right here,
Yeah,
like at this level?
yeah.
Hmm.
Because you will rotate. If you keep it higher and you have a tight hips, your body will turn to the is on, will turn to the right. Yeah,
Like
because he's
this.
lifting what, left leg or the right leg. What is he lifting? I cannot see. What is he lifting? The left leg or the right leg?
It looks like the right leg.
Or if it's the right leg, if you keep on lifting it, your hips will turn to the right.
You
Will
mean
rotate.
like this other picture?
Yeah, but that is
Yeah.
really the hip opener. That's another pose.
Yes, that's another
In this
movement.
case, the pose below there is for you to extend, no, both legs. Full extension with the squared hips. That one, you are really opening the hips to one side.
Yeah. Yeah, but I want you to think about how the load changes on the shoulders,
Yeah,
right?
heavier.
So
On
going
the,
from here to here, it's going to be slightly um, one-sided, a little bit. Not as much here because you're still parallel as here. Notice how her shoulders shifted
Mhm.
because when she took this leg over, it pulled this whole side of her body over. Now, I like to encourage students to keep the shoulders like this even when the leg is bent because then you know that you're really going into the front of the hip as opposed to, turning the body. It's a little bit of a cheat. If your
Yeah, but if you
objective
do
is
that,
to,
Amy, you cannot bring it that high.
yeah, it
If you
depends on the
if
person.
you square your shoulder, you cannot bring your feet that high. You cannot really raise it, your knee towards the ceiling.
Some people can.
Ah,
Some
yeah.
people can. Yeah. But this is a really good place for an assist. So you
Yeah.
stand right here.
Uh-huh.
You place if I'm standing here facing her, my right hand will press this shoulder down. My left hand will come around and take her thigh, and pull it this way. So I'm going to
Okay.
press this down and pull this back. That's a big assist, but it can feel good for people who can do it.
Because it's a preparatory pose for a wild thing.
You probably do low lunge to start,
Oh yeah.
get ready.
So
Yeah.
you go to that pose is good to go to wild thing.
Do what?
The wild thing where
Oh,
you will
yes,
drop
yes,
that.
that goes into the wild thing. Yes, when this foot lands right here. But I want you to notice how the load has changed in the shoulders between here it's more subtle, and then here it's a little bit more pronounced, the change of the load, because we've moved the leg, we're moving the leg. Okay?
That's why she's compensating on her left arm. So it's pushing
Yeah. She's kind
her
of
on the
going
left
off.
hand to compensate on the load of the right hand.
Yeah, it's possible. Yeah. So you have to kind of be careful because that's why I think it's better to keep the shoulders square because then the weight distribution is more even across the upper back. Here it's not even. The weight distribution is not even. So I kind of feel like it's safer to stay here with the shoulders, bend the knee, and only go as far over in the draping the leg as your shoulders can stay square. So if your shoulder starts going, don't go further. That's me though. That's me. And it's there's variations. So.
So the rotation will only happen on the hip area,
Yeah,
if that's what you were saying, because you're forcing your shoulder down. So your
yeah,
thoracic spine is not participating in the rotation. So it's only
correct,
around the hips and the lumbar area.
correct. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. It's just cleaner. I mean, it's not right or wrong, but to me, it's cleaner. And I feel like it's safer for the shoulders because you're not going off center.
Amy, my opinion is that it's okay. Anyway, you'll
Sure.
do it on the other side so you can balance off
Yeah, I agree. And
the load. So
if you do a counter pose in between, it's fine.
yeah, you will anyway you will do it on the left side so
Hmm.
you can balance it off.
Unless there's some kind of a shoulder injury.
Yeah, you cannot even do down dog properly if you have shoulder
Yeah.
injury.
Or if there's some kind of sensitivity going on.
Yeah.
Or if there's like I have one student who's had shoulder surgery.
Oh,
So his mobility is different. He can do a down dog, but he can't do as much rotation. So for him, you would want him to keep his shoulders square.
yeah.
Okay. So let me see what time it is. Oh, I'll look on my phone. What time is it, somebody? Oh, here. 5:25. Okay. All right. So let's talk about different types of stretching. This is just, I'm thinking this might be something familiar already. Okay, so ballistic stretching is bouncing. And this was something that was done years and years ago. And then they came out with the idea that it wasn't good for you. And lately, the research has been kind of inconclusive, but we still don't really do it because they thought
In
maybe you could strain your muscles by doing those bouncing stretches. So
yeah, in martial arts they do that. That's what they
where
do.
where
Martial arts.
martial
Those doing
arts?
martial arts. Yeah, yeah.
Oh, interesting.
Wushu. Yeah, they force their
Okay.
body.
Yeah. So I mean, we don't do that in yoga, but it's okay. It's not there's no research that says it's as bad for you as they used to think. By the way, I'm taking all of my information from this book. It's called Yoga Biomechanics by Jules Mitchell. It's the first biomechanics book on yoga. So, and it's just a couple of years ago. So it's as new as current research as we can get.
When I was younger, I did martial arts and we did like, like Baddha Konasana, like butterfly pose, and we would like flap our
Yeah,
legs.
yeah, you do your knees. Yeah.
And that's the closest thing I can think of to. We didn't do it otherwise. Like we weren't like bouncing into like the splits or anything like that. Probably would have been. But I do remember we did like flap our legs.
I remember that too. Yeah, or even dance. Some dance classes will do things like that. Yeah.
I still kind of do that a little today because it just reminds. It's just reminiscent of my childhood, and it never hurt.
Yeah,
So
right. Yeah.
yeah.
That's what she says in the book is that they used to think it was bad for you, but there's no real research that says not to do it.
Yeah, I could,
Absolutely.
if you're doing it so aggressively, you could like pull a muscle, but you just like, just you get a little out of control with
Yeah.
it. All of a sudden, like you rip something.
Right. Or if you're already overtrained, if you're
Yeah.
already, if your muscles are already spent and you try to do things like that,
Mm.
take it over the top. So, and then dynamic stretching is slow, repetitive movements that increase in range. So you may go, so like let's say, oh, we do this one in, show you, do a little demo. We do this one in Shiva raise sequences sometimes where we'll work into a twist. Oh, let me change my legs. So you'll reach this arm under.
We can't really see your legs from
Oh.
the. If you like tilt the camera down a little, we'll probably. Okay, yeah, that's probably
Yeah.
good.
So and she'll do like a reach under here, and she's a dancer, so she likes to add these artistic things. But you'll reach here, and then you'll go up, and then you'll reach under, and do that like a few times, and maybe you get a little more each time, right? A little more reach. So that's one example. I remember one time in one of my trainings, she had us do cat cow really, really fast. Like, it was really wild. It was fun, but we had warmed up to it. But
In
so,
lowlands, one
huh?
time I did in lowlands, I
Uh-huh.
made them hug their thigh.
Yeah.
Both yeah, and then so that it will be more challenging for the core, because if you cannot have a good balance if you don't
Oh,
have the
yeah.
hand. So it's a way of subtly engaging your core,
Mm-hmm.
and then you make them hug it, because that's the way for me to test if they're ready for arm balance. Because if they cannot
Mm.
square their hips and balance on that
That's really
position.
good that you think that way. I don't do that as much. Like always paying attention to what they may or may not be ready, or always evaluating. I think
And
that's
I
a
think,
really good skill.
what
Yeah,
did you
yeah,
say?
yung one thing I noticed with some of the teachers, they do not really analyze the capabilities. Like you, Kyla, you're a teacher. you have an idea on the level of skills or capabilities of all your pupils individually, not only as a whole class. In
Yeah.
most yoga teacher, you can bring your discipline in teaching, the children into a class where you can individually distinguish them and know their capabilities and their weaknesses. And that way you can be more effective teacher to them. Because you cannot just have a one size fits all thing. So it's your skill that you can bring it to yoga and becoming an excellent teacher.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
Yeah.
Okay, so that
That's a lot
is
of work. That's a lot of work, but it will pay off.
rewarding.
Having happy
Yes.
customers, happy students.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so that's dynamic stretching, slow, repetitive movements that increase in range. Static stretching is when you hold a stretch for a given period of time. Passive stretch may require like an external force, either a strap or a wall or a block. For example, props that you're working against or that you're releasing into. And then an active stretch involves recruiting what you were saying earlier, Manny, is opposing muscle groups. So this is the agonist antagonist. So in other words, in order to stretch the hamstring, for example, you may engage the quadriceps. That's that principle. And then two others, proprioceptive neuromuscular facilitation or PNF, or also called muscle energy technique. Are you guys familiar with this?
Because that's where you develop your balance if you can tap into that.
Yeah. So for example, it's I'll do it with a strap. It's a contract and relax method. So what you would do is I'm gonna pull my leg towards me, but with my arms, but I'm gonna press my foot forward with my muscles. And I'm gonna hold that for 6 to 10 seconds. So I'm pressing my leg towards the bed. So 6 seconds, maybe 3 more. Then I'm gonna relax, and then theoretically that will release something so that I can take my leg a little closer. Now let me do it one more time. I'm gonna press my leg forward. So I'm actually contracting the hamstrings for about 6 to 10 seconds. And then I'm going to relax. And let's see if I can pull it. Yeah, I got a little bit more. A little bit deeper in there. Okay, so that's really fun to do on an individual basis. You can do that on a student, particularly if they need help they're
Actually, that is the strength, Amy. That PNF is very very strong in a Pilates practice.
Oh yeah.
That is their main technique. That's why there is
Really?
a lot of pulsing. Yeah. Then after pulsing, you isometrically hold it,
Hmm.
contracting the muscle. That you try to get some kind of training from Pilates so that it's really good to complement the yoga
Yeah,
yoga.
I'm Pilates trained, but we didn't do that as much.
What kind of Pilates did you take? The
Um,
traditional or the STOT? They have the STOT Pilates, STOTT
no, I
Pilates.
didn't do stop.
But they're very, very concerned about the functional anatomy of
Mm.
every.
Yeah, their training is really good. No, I did it at a local college. Yeah,
Yeah.
so I did it. And she was a ballerina, so it was that's more my thing, so I enjoyed it. So let's see, where was I? Okay, so that's the PNF method. And this is a good hand assist thing. What you basically would do is your student is on their back, you'll have them press their foot against your hand, and you're going to push against it. So, and then count for about 6 to 10 seconds, have them relax, and then you can bring the leg a little closer to their body. So that's a good assist to use. And then the last one here is resistance stretching. And that's when you warm up the muscle with a few concentric contractions like this, using resistance like maybe a light weight or a band. And then you pause at the shortened end, like here, and then slowly with control, you're going to lengthen the muscle with the weight still in your hand. So that's a lengthening, it's a eccentric lengthening of the muscle with resistance. And that's another type of stretch.
And that is where the TRX is very, very strong.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
can do the concentric and eccentric.
Like when you lower yourself, right? Like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But sometimes when you pull yourself up, but when you lower yourself down, that is when you do the eccentric stretch. You're away from the
Yeah.
center.
Exactly. Yeah.
So with the slow tempo, we have
Mhm.
normal tempo, fast tempo, but I love the slow tempo because that is where you can really
Feel it.
muscle contracting. Yeah.
Yeah. Did you have a question, Kyla?
Yeah, I wanted to, I guess, for an example for the piano, I was wondering, like, we did like the hamstring example, but how would you stretch? Would there be a way to stretch like a deeper muscle, like maybe like the hip flexors with?
Yeah, so you could put them in on their, let's see, let's think about that. You could put them, so you need to press the knee forward because you want to contract the hip flexor, right? So you can have them on their back and have them, it would be like this. They'd have to press their knee into your hand. Right? But it's hard to test. I guess you could then go like this to see how much flexibility.
That's a quad stretch. Yeah, very good.
Right? So you could do it that way. Or you could do it standing and then do the dancer's pose.
Do the dancers. Yeah. To me, my problem is in extending my hip flexors. Too much.
Oh, really?
Too much flexion. You weaken the extension side. So
you could also do it here, like in this position, like and then go back.
Yeah. That's why it's hard to do the sugarcane pose if you have a very, very tight hip flexor. Very tight hip flexor. It cannot extend that much.
What's the sugar cane? I don't know that.
You're actually that's an American invention. You're in half moon, then you catch your back leg, then hold it.
Oh yeah, I know that one. Yeah.
It's not in the traditional pose, but the Americans introduced the the catching of the leg, and they call it sugarcane.
I didn't know that's what it was called. Yeah. Okay. Good. All right. So, anatomy of a stretch. So I found this really fascinating, this next section. Stop me if you have questions. It's a little bit detail heavy. So this is one muscle fiber, and it's called a myofibril. It's tiny. Several of these will make up a whole muscle fiber. And in this fiber are these filaments. And from one break in the filaments to the other is called a sarcomere. And see these red lines and these blue lines? They slide against each other, and that's what changes the length of the muscle. So when they slide towards each other like this, that's a contraction. The muscle gets shorter. When they slide away from each other, that's the eccentric contraction. It's getting longer this way. And then if you put a bunch of these together, each one will have like a little film, the connective tissue, each one of these, and you put a bunch of them together, and all those connective tissue that covers each myofibril collect at the end of the muscle, and that becomes the tendon. So it's just a thick layer of connective tissue, and it's going to connect the muscle to the bone. So tendons connect muscle to bone, ligaments connect bone to bone. But they're similar material, connective tissue. They're just organized a little bit differently. That may be an oversimplification. They probably have some differences, but that's how you can think of it. All right, so parallel versus bipinnate muscle morphology and the force on the tendons. And that has to do with, let me just get a picture for you. Parallel and bipinnate muscles. Okay. Muscle fibers. So if you have muscle fibers that are like this, they're all parallel, right? When it shortens to contract, it's going to pull on these tendons. And it's going to, it's the force on the tendon is going to be maximum because it's all of the fibers pulling on the same two tendons in a very straight line position. Now the bipinnate muscle, the fibers are at a diagonal. And there's this little connective tissue that runs down the center. So when these contract, they contract in this diagonal position, it's not going to have as strong as a pull on the tendon. Can you see why that is? No.
Can you do that again? I'm sorry.
That's why it's harder to stretch the hamstring than the
Yeah. Okay. So it all has to do with the position of the muscle fiber. And this is all about force. This is all about physics. So if you pull, if you make this muscle shorter, this is a hamstring.
Shorter after contracting.
Huh?
Shorter meaning like contract.
Yes, contract. So we're talking a concentric contraction. This whole muscle is going to get shorter. It's going to be a full maximum, 100% pull on these two tendons. Right? Because all of these fibers, right, all of the fibers are pulling on these tendons because it's getting shorter, all in the same direction, the same intensity. But here, when the muscle fibers are in a diagonal, they're shortening from here to here, right? These are what's shortening. So it's not pulling directly on this tendon right here. So the force is less on the tendons here in the quadricep because of this different orientation of the muscle fibers. Does that make sense? Yeah.
So trapezius is also of the same nature. The trapezius, the traps is also diagonal. So they have the same stretching also.
You mean bipinnate or parallel?
Yeah, it's bipinnate, the trapezius.
Oh, okay, cool.
It's triangularly shaped. Remember, the trapezius is from the.
Well, I know the whole muscle itself is like this, but I don't know what the individual.
Individually, they're also
muscles are
like a triangle on the forming a triangle.
Okay, good.
That's the one that's getting tight.
Okay. So moving on, eccentric contraction, meaning these are lengthening, they're pulling away from each other, but they're still contracting, meaning there's still force. It still has power. They used to think that when you contract the muscle, that was shortening, and when you lengthen, that you were relaxing. But now we know that eccentric contractions also have power. They're not just relaxing. There's actually power in it. And that's because they discovered some new element called tippin that in the filament that acts as a grip, kind of a grip as the muscle is lengthening. All right, and then isometric contraction is no movement at all. The muscle
I have-
length does not change. Uh-huh.
Sorry, I got a little confused. So
Yes.
on the concentric contraction, which is, the muscle shortening,
Yes.
but the fibers are still being pulled away from, they're going still in opposite direction. So the muscle's not necessarily getting longer, even though it's being pulled. It's
You mean
just
eccentric?
like in the example we were just looking at.
So concentric is, think of the bicep. Concentric is a bicep curl. This
Yeah.
muscle gets shorter because it's pulling on this tendon to bring this bone towards my arm. When I when I open this arm, when I go this way, this is lengthening again, back to its original shape, original length,
Oh,
but it's
then it's
eccentric.
stretching.
Yeah, it's an eccentric
Okay,
contraction.
so in the concentric contraction, the tendon is stretching.
Yes.
Okay, that's why I was like, wait, what's getting
Yes.
pulled? What's
In the movement, if you're doing the high plank to low plank, that is a good example also of eccentric concentric contraction.
Yeah,
When
because
you go down,
when you push
you are
up,
already
you have to use strength, and so but you're lengthening, right?
Thank-
So
exactly.
the reason why this is an important discussion is because people used to think that when you stretch, you make your muscles longer, but you're actually not really changing the length of your muscles. What you're doing is you're exerting tensile force on the tendons. Okay?
So we're like stretching the tendons, like
You're,
lengthen.
yes, you can say stretching, or you can just say you're exerting tensile load on it. But yeah, we think of that as a stretch.
Yeah, I agree.
Okay.
Like me, Amy.
Hmm.
Like me, Amy. They said that my muscles lengthened. I'm telling them no, they did not. It's just my bone stacking of my body, my spine, my hips, just more active for my muscles to prop them up, because I
Mhm.
noticed that my friends in my childhood days, I'm a lot taller than them now, but they shorten because they're not.
Because
they
they're
live
not
a,
lengthening their spine.
yeah,
Yeah.
they're living a sedentary life. Actually, it's your bone that is shortening, not your
They're they're
muscle.
they're compressing. You're not
They're compressing,
having
yeah.
the axial extension. Yeah.
So your muscles are not helping you, because it's the muscle that actually supports the spine,
The
the
vertebrae.
bones.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
So,
that's right.
Yeah,
I agree. You don't really, yeah.
huh?
I was gonna try to explain. So I kind of get why the PNF works now, because when we're contracting the muscle that we want to stretch, we're actually stretching the tendon during the
Yeah.
contraction.
Yeah.
After when
Then when
you
you relax.
push it, when you relax, it's just been
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
stretched.
That's
The
a
actual
really
tendon.
good way to put it together. Mm-hmm.
I
You know,
see. Okay, I
you know what,
Isn't that cool?
you know why we feel good after we stretch the muscle? It in a way distributes the synovial fluid rather than getting stacked up on our joints. But when we are stretching, you're actually distributing that fluid all over your muscles because the muscle have no liquid by itself, so it must be provided with
Yeah.
the
The
They call
joints,
it synovial fluid. The joints are,
the joints
you know,
don't have
they're
they don't
distributing.
have circulatory, they don't
Yeah.
have blood vessels that go into the joints. Movement has to move the fluid into them. Yeah.
what's the fluid called?
So that's why we feel good.
Synovial fluid. It's
How
the
do you spell
fluid that's
that?
between your joints.
What's it called?
It's watery. It's a watery base.
Synovial?
Synovial fluid, yeah.
And if you don't use that, you don't distribute that, it will turn into vapor. That's why when you're stretching, sometimes you hear those popping sounds.
Oh yeah.
That's the synovial fluid turning into vapor.
Hmm.
That's why all people they have those cracking noises in
The
their body because
cracking.
of that. Yeah.
Yeah, and it also encourages more fluid to go into the joint when you move. So,
Yes.
okay, and then so we talked about eccentric, concentric, and isometric contraction. Isometric is when there's no change in length at all, but the muscle is still active, right? That's like if I just,
High plank is a good example. High
yeah,
plank is a good example of isometric contraction.
yeah. Okay, and then talking about muscle elongation, that's what we were just saying a moment ago, that actually what we're actually talking about is it deformation, meaning are you actually changing the shape of your muscle? Is it sarcogenesis, or are you creating more sarcomeres, which can happen, especially in hypertrophy, which is when you weight train and you build bulk. You're actually making more of these guys. Or is it tolerance, meaning you've become accustomed to feeling the stretch and you have learned how to breathe through it, and you've learned how to, your tolerance has been built up to the sensation of the stretch. So those are the three different ways of talking about muscle elongation. More,
Can you
more specific way of talking about them, not just the muscle literally getting longer.
explain those three again really quickly?
Sure. So deformation is the muscle actually changing shape. Like, let's say you had, let's say someone who is in rehab. Maybe they got stuck in maybe a contracted position because of immobility, not using their muscle. When you don't use your muscle, you lose muscles and you have more tendon because the muscle mass has gone down and there's more tendon. So to open that up, through rehab is going to change the shape. That's deformation, actually changing the shape of that muscle, pulling on it. Or is it sarcogenesis, meaning you've created more muscle through training or growth? Kids, they're growing, they're creating more muscle, they're lengthening, their limbs are lengthening. Or is it tolerance, meaning you just have learned, have trained to be more comfortable with the sensations of the stretch? Because for people who are not used to stretching, it's painful. And I remember when I first started yoga, going into low lunge, when they said sink your hips, that was really uncomfortable for me. But now I can do it. There's stretches still there. I still feel it, but I have a higher tolerance for that sensation. And of course, there's more flexibility over time. Okay. Okay. Good.
How about the sarcogenesis? Is that the one
Sarcogenesis.
to
Uh-huh.
pile up your muscle, create new muscles,
Yeah. Yeah.
making it bigger through, like the bodybuilders? That's what they
Yes.
do.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah. Which you need more protein intake in order to do that, in addition to training.
Yeah.
All
And
right.
also, as people who are getting older, we need to at least give some muscles into our body because we're losing muscles.
Yes, it's really important to weight train and really important to have enough protein, to eat enough protein. Both. Yeah. All right. Tensile load. So we're going to summarize, put it all together, which we kind of did already a moment ago. Yeah, that's the next one. Actually, I want to go to this one first. This is just a biomechanics technical term, passive resistance torque. So we know that torque is a rotational force. PRT is the measurement of the resistance against joint rotation. And you measure it by measuring the angle using a goniometer right here, the angle, joint angle, and the force that's measured by a dynamometer. It's just a technical thing but it shows you that it can be very precise science. And also, if you think about, for example, body proportions, if you have a really heavy person, that a lot of body mass, and maybe you're gonna put them in pigeon, for example, and maybe they're new, or they have some kind of limitations. You got to think about the torque, the rotation that's happening on that knee, right? So this is an important idea to think about rotation force on joints. So just to summarize, acute stretching reduces PRT, which means an increase in range of motion. So the less resistance there is, the more flexible, or the greater the range of motion. It's just a term. But if you see that term, PRT, then you know. If it's a low PRT, that means there's more flexibility in that joint, as far as rotational torque or rotational force. Okay, last one, tensile load. So summary of tensile loads. Concentric contraction is a tendon stretch. Oh, I wanted to show you this. So here's a fiber. There's a collection of fibers in a fascicle. There's a collection of fascicles in a tendon. And then if you extend this, oh, wait a minute. Yeah, this would be connected to the bone right here. So it's a bad picture. It was the only one I could find. Concentric contraction is a tendon stretch because remember, we're shortening the muscle and pulling on the tendons. A passive stretch is a tendon stretch because you're just sinking into it. You're not contracting. Isometric contraction at the end range of motion can be more of a tensile load on the tendon as well, depending. Like if you're in a deep low lunge and you contract right there, like you're at the end, you're at the end of the flexibility point, the end of the range of motion, and you contract an isometric, that's going to pull on that tendon as well. And that's it. End of story.
Very good. Actually, one thing good, Kyla, you want a copy of that book? An ebook. Yeah, I'll send your email. I'll email it to you.
You have this one?
The ebook version.
You have this one?
Yeah, the ebook version.
Oh, good. Did I ask
I'm a very studious student.
You really are. Oh my goodness. Look at you.
I always follow the Mahatma Gandhi's way of life. You live as if you'll die tomorrow, but learn as if you will live forever.
Oh, that's beautiful.
Yeah, that's Gandhi.
Well, you will live forever. And the knowledge will go with you.
Through other people.
Well, I mean, not on this earth, but you will live
you
forever.
Want a copy? You want an ebook copy so you can share it. But that's that's not a legal copy. That is in a way. I have a Russian site that they practically post a lot of US books, medicine, anything that you have in the US. Maybe that's their way of really, the life loss. And
sharing the knowledge.
From that Russian site, I download a lot of books from there.
Yeah, I love the book. Yeah, this is a good lecture. I feel like when I had my little moment of figuring it all out, I was like, oh my gosh, this is actually really interesting.
Those technical books, Kyla, you don't really read it from cover to cover. I look at the table of contents and what interests me and what is applicable in the near future. That is only what I read. I do not read the whole thing. It's really too tedious. So it's by topic when I read those books.
Yeah. Cool. Well, that's all I have for today, guys.
Yes. Thank you. That's a very, very enlightening. I have that book, but I haven't really opened it.
Mm.
I just downloaded it because when I go for that Russian site, I look
Mm-hmm.
for some books about yoga.
Mm-hmm.
Just enter the word yoga, and all the books about yoga are all there, and then you can choose which one do you want.
That well, it's really good. So the author she has, advanced degrees in biomechanics. So she knows her stuff, but she has a really good way of breaking it down for you.
Yeah,
So
I
it's very
haven't
readable.
read it, but when it comes to
Yeah.
biomechanics, I follow also Bernie Clark
Oh,
because
I
Bernie
don't know
Clark
that.
has simplified the whole thing, the whole biomechanics into simpler. Like
Mm-hmm.
the concentric eccentric is saying a bone to bone stretch, meaning in a
Mm-hmm.
forward fold, flesh to flesh,
Mm-hmm.
or flesh to bone. Go beyond that, stuff like that. And
Yeah.
like in a straddle, you
Mm-hmm.
can go for a flesh to flesh, but some people they go to past the bone, meaning on the floor itself, no? When their
Mm.
chest is right in the straddle. So he's saying what are the differences and what are the effects of those poses.
Yeah.
He's saying that the best stretching is the flesh to flesh. Don't go beyond that because that is what we are designed for. That is how we are anatomically structured.
Right. So you don't want to attempt to change the bone to bone
Yes.
anatomy.
What
The
he's
bone to
saying is that unless you're a ballerina, they are deforming themselves intentionally. The gymnasts, they are not
Yeah.
natural human
Yeah.
beings.
But
In a
they
way, there are
sometimes they will pay for it.
in the future, yes.
Yeah. And then they have
Yeah.
their lifespan is shortened because not life, but their performance span is
Yeah.
shortened because of certain
That is a
stress.
sacrifice you have to make for a moment of glory.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. All right, guys. Good discussion today.
Yeah. I'll send it to you, Amy, and
Uh-huh.
then send it to Kyla. Yeah.
Kyla. Okay, and
Maybe
then
later send it to you.
yeah, and Friday Manny's gonna share
No, it will
his
be Saturday to
anatomy.
me.
Huh?
It will be Saturday to me.
Saturday to you, Friday for us. Yep.
Are
Sounds
we at
good.
How much are you
4:30?
giving me?
4:30, yeah.
How much
How
time are
much
you giving?
how much time do you need?
No, I'm just, maybe you can just go along. I will prepare for a 40 to 1 hour talk
Yes,
about that.
sounds good.
We'll be talking about a particular pose and how anatomy is affecting how you can use anatomy for that specific pose because I don't like to discuss anatomy in an academic sense, no? It's so boring to me. So I would focus
Okay.
on one pose where a lot of things are happening. Like the
Okay.
Ekapada Kondinya one, a lot of things are happening. You have the twisting there, you have the extension, the flexion.
Well, were you gonna
So,
do your sequence as well? You were gonna talk about that, the anatomy in your sequence that you
yeah, that's why the
yeah.
sequence is in a way uh, it was done that way so to prepare you for that big pose.
Mm-hmm.
When I noticed that in the past that there are teachers that they will make us do a lot of movements, but when it comes to big pose, I was wondering why did you overstretch our our hamstring when we will be doing a lot of hamstring stretch that we need to to lift up, especially extension when you have to lift up one-legged crow, for example. You
Mm-hmm.
need a very strong hamstring to be able to lift your back leg, to extend it. And then after so many stretching of the hamstring, of course, at that period, it's a little bit weak. It's very hard to
Mm.
you weaken the muscle. So I'm telling them, you better plan out on how you want to do things. So that the success of the student doing it will be the rate of success will
Maximize.
be higher.
Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
will be higher. So I will try to break it down.
That will be
How
fun.
why I did those poses preparation and then going to. It's not
All
an
right.
academic. It's not an academic discussion. It's more of a
Applied.
functional aspect.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sounds
Like
good. Thank you.
yeah.
And then
Okay.
I'll finish up on the Yoga Sutras from Desikachar or whatever
Yeah.
time we
Very,
have left.
Sinit Desikachar has explained it in a easier. easier way to understand it rather than the I read the Iyengar
Yeah.
version. He's talking about abhyasa, oh my God, or the death, or the
Mm.
he's talking a lot of things. It makes it more difficult to understand.
Yeah.
And
I gotcha.
and like Desikachar, it's straightforward.
Mm-hmm.
You know why he's like that? Desikachar is the way he explains it. That's why I like him. Do you
Mm-hmm.
know he's an engineer by profession.
Oh, that's right. He is. Yeah.
So it's cut and dried. He looks at the body, and the structure, everything. It's very
Yeah.
okay.
Good. Awesome. Thanks, guys.
Thanks.
Have a good evening. Namaste. Good to see you.
See you. See you.
See you in a couple of days. Bye.
Bye.
Bye. Love you.
Bye.
Say hi to everybody.